America joins us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. Teddy, the last few years, people by the last day of January have been fully ready to focus on college baseball here in the Magnolia State. A little bit less so with some exciting basketball and some disappointing results on the diamond with Ole Miss and Mississippi State the last couple of years. But it's getting close. It's getting really, really close. 2 weeks from this Friday, we open the college baseball season, and we're happy to visit with you for the first time this year. What's up, my man?
It's a great time of year. Hard to believe that opening day is closing in on us quite this fast, but it's a great time of year.
So just another year of a bunch of good teams in the SEC. Maybe that's the place that we start because, good grief, you look at preseason rankings, and it is, as usual, per usual, littered with teams from the SEC.
Yeah, the SEC looks exceptionally strong again this year. You've got LSU and Arkansas in the West kind of leading the way, and then Florida seems to be consensusly at the top of the East, but Tennessee and Vanderbilt are certainly in the mix as well. And you look up and down, A&M expected to bounce back after a bit of a down season, and I say that, and they made a regional final. Auburn looks good, Alabama looks good. The whole conference again looks quite strong. Which if you're a team trying to make your way up from the cellar, maybe is a little bit daunting right now.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we're not used to seeing teams from Mississippi not in the preseason top 25 and not in some of the lists that you see going into the year. So let's talk about the 3D1 teams here in Mississippi, and let's actually start in Hattiesburg. So the Scott Berry era has come to an end. Christian Ostrander, the new head coach at the University of Southern Mississippi, a great reputation, especially for the work that he's done with pitchers over the last few years. Your thoughts on Southern Miss in the Sun Belt this season as we begin year one of the Christian Ostrander era?
Yeah, it's interesting because not only are they not ranked, they're not picked to win the Sun Belt, and I think a lot of people are not going to have them second in the Sun Belt either because Troy brings back an awful lot. And honestly, that says more about Coastal Carolina, which is the favorite, and Troy than Southern Miss, I think. There's just a lot new in Hattiesburg. Obviously, anytime there's a coaching change, especially somebody that's been there as long as Scott Berry with a first-time coach, you got to wonder just how are things going to work. Obviously, they're going to have to work through some things in the early part of the season, I think. And then you also are losing Tanner Hall, who just was so outstanding on Friday nights for the last couple of years there for the Golden Eagles. I think the pitching staff is still good. They don't have a Tanner Hall, I don't think. But you look at the depth of the bullpen. They've got a lot of options they can go to there. If they can just get the right mix in the rotation, I like where they're at. There are a ton of veterans in the lineup that moved on after last season. But I think that, this is going to be, Southern Miss is traditionally a pitching based outfit. I think that's what this team looks like. But I do think the offense has some upside as well.
Is there any reason to think that the Sun Belt can't be a 3 or 4 bid league?
Oh, no, I would project 3, 4. Yeah, for sure. I think they've got that in them again this year. And you look at what the Sun Belt did in the NCAA tournament last year. Obviously, Southern Miss in a super. Coastal goes down in a regional final. Troy acquitted itself really well in a regional. So I think that they've proven themselves. I think it's a strong league again. Those 3 teams especially. I like Texas State. The Cajuns look good. I think 3 or 4 is perfectly reasonable to expect out of the Sun Belt.
All right, Teddy, let's go up the road from Hattiesburg to Starkville, Mississippi State. It was not pretty at the end of last season. Is this a bounce back year? It feels like a really important year for Chris Lemonis and this Mississippi State baseball team. I don't think there are a ton of questions offensively. There are questions, I think, on the mound. What is your assessment of Mississippi State?
Yeah, I think the offense last year even was pretty good. And you look at some of the guys that you can count on offensively, you've got some veterans there, you've got some power there, you've got some speed there. I mean, you have exciting freshmen and newcomers. Like I really like Amani Larry, and Dakota Jordan is a really, really talented player, and he's a lot of fun to watch, obviously. So if they can just build around an offense like that, I think that's got to be the starting point for them. But ultimately, they are going to need some pitchers to step up, whether that's newcomers, whether that's a returner like Nathan Dahm taking a step forward. Something's got to happen there, because the pitching staff just was not good enough last year, and they know that. That's why they made the changes they made. But that is got to be the focus on this season if they're going to make that improvement that we're talking about.
And I guess from Starkville, we go west on the road to Oxford and take a look at an Ole Miss team that's going to have a lot of new faces in the lineup, whether you're talking about Luke Hill, who comes in from Arizona State, or Jackson Ross, who comes in from Florida Atlantic, or some of the other new pieces, or even young pieces that come in that are going to be expected to make a difference. It's an Ole Miss team that struggled in a way that a Mike Bianco team has not struggled in his entire tenure at Ole Miss of over 2 decades. Is this a bounce-back season for the Rebels?
I think I like their chances a little bit more to have a bigger bounce back than Mississippi State. They lose Alderman, they lose Gonzalez. Those are 2 really big pieces that they have to replace. But I like what they brought in. You mentioned Luke Hill, you got Andrew Fisher. Like there are good offensive pieces there. And then the pitching staff last year, again, not good enough. They know that. It was rather on the younger side, though. And so you're hoping that the now sophomores are taking a step forward this year, like Saunier, like Quinn. And if they have the ability to do that, they were kind of thrown into the fire last year in some respects. Ole Miss really never recovered from losing Elliott. If they can get the production that they're expecting from players like those sophomores, I think they have a chance to be a lot more competitive, really throughout the SEC West. But they've got to do it. They've got to take that step forward, and that's not going to be an easy step forward, considering everything that happened last year.
Teddy, one of the pieces that's interesting to me on the mound this year for Ole Miss is the return of Josh Mallitz. I think there were a lot of people that thought that he would turn pro after last season, even after missing the entire year from an injury. He did not. I mean, he was an unhittable piece of that bullpen 2 years ago when Ole Miss won a national championship, and then misses all of last season with Tommy John. What's reasonable to expect from a guy like Josh Mallitz?
Yeah, I mean, he was, like you said, a really important piece of that bullpen. And if he's back to full health, I don't know that you could expect him to return to quite that level, because it was really an impressive run for him down the stretch. But I think that he can be a very reliable piece, and they need that because, if you're looking at the rotation can be fine. Maybe it can be better than fine if the sophomores step up. But I also think it would be reasonable for Ole Miss to maybe build from the back a little bit more and try and take the pressure off of the rotation. And if you have a Mallitz at the back end or giving you multiple innings there, I think that could really help with some of those younger pitchers in the rotation. Mallitz's return, I think, could be a big X factor for them.
Is there anything that in the first 2 weeks, maybe first 3 weeks, just pops off the page at you in terms of schedule? We've got so many of these tournaments early season that give us good matchups. Is there anything that stands out among all of it?
I don't think so this year. I actually find opening weekend to be a little bit disappointing from a scheduling standpoint. That's not to say there aren't exciting matchups. Obviously there are, but there is not, to my memory anyway, one of those tournaments that, if you think back a couple years when Mississippi State and Ole Miss were both in the same tournament on opening weekend, and it was like 6 of the top 14 teams or something crazy like that in the country, that in Arlington, that's not happening this year. There are good tournaments, there are good matchups, but there's not that show-stopping tournament or series early on. So, maybe something will emerge, but I think right now we're looking at more just like good matchups rather than must-see tournaments.
You know, that was one of my favorite all-time baseball weekends. You had Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Texas, Texas Tech, and TCU all in a major league ballpark, and that's when we were coming back from the craziness of COVID. That was awesome. It was fantastic. So, hey, Teddy, great catching up with you to start the season. We look forward to visiting with you throughout the year and wish you nothing but the best.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. I'm glad to be talking college baseball again.
No doubt.